Occupant restraint systems, or seatbelts as they are commonly known, are one of the most effective safety features found in all vehicles, designed to restrain occupants from being thrown around or ejected that may occur during a road crash or sudden braking. They save more lives than any other safety feature in a vehicle and can reduce the risk of death in a motor vehicle by up to 45%, while also reducing the risk of serious injury by up to 50%.
We've recorded quite a number of accidents or crashes where we saw vehicles rolling over, where we saw head-on crashes, and passengers not being spared their lives, mainly because of non-use of safety belts.
Despite this obvious benefit that the use of safety belts offer to passengers in a vehicle, many passengers and drivers continue to get inside vehicles and drive off without the use of seat belts. In Botswana, lack of seatbelt usage is one of the most common causes of fatalities and serious injuries that vehicle occupants can suffer during road crashes.
Tiriso ya mabante ke sengwe sa dilo tse e leng gore di a kgothalediwa. Lebante le botlhokwa ka lebaka la gore le dira gore ha go nna le kotsi ya tshoganyetso gongwe le bona sengwe kana phologolo kana tloko e be le gore o kgona gore le tsenye gore le kganelle motho mo teng gona le gore a ye go wela ko ntle kwa.
Vehicle occupants who do not wear seatbelts and become involved in car crash can suffer from what is known as deceleration injuries. These are injuries that result from sudden reduction in motion that can cause the neck of the passenger to snap forward too quickly, resulting in neck and spinal injuries.
We've also noted what we call deceleration type of injuries, is when basically you have the neck move very fast. Then you have neck injuries and also maybe rupturing the aorta in the what we call the thoracic, second thoracic level.
Seatbelts can have a very big impact on whether one arrives home safe or not, because accidents can happen anytime. Therefore, one of the first things that anyone must do when they step into a vehicle is to put on a seatbelt. All passengers, including the driver and the front seat passengers, as well as other passengers seated in the rear car seats, must wear seatbelts every time when traveling in a car.
I think a lot of people do not regard this as risks because sometimes they become habits, more so that we do them more often, or most drivers do them more often, and therefore they don't perceive the risk that this may pose to them, because one is just likely to say, but I've been drinking and driving for the past so many years. I've been driving without putting my safety belt for the past so many years and nothing has happened to me. So this is where a lot of people are really losing it in terms of understanding what the risk is should an accident happen when all these are not observed.
Surveys indicate that most passengers think that it is unnecessary to wear seatbelts when sitting in the rear of a vehicle. However, non-use of seatbelts in the rear seats not only places the lives of rear seat passengers at risk, but also of passengers in the front seats. When a crash happens at high speed or sudden braking, the rear seat passenger is catapulted forward at high speed that they can crash into the passenger in the front seat, causing the risk of head and spinal injuries.
Well, one of the things that have aggravated the injuries of people who got involved in road traffic accident is the failure to use the seat belt.
What we know is that the first cars that were made, they didn't have seat belt. So after the postmortems, then the pathologists noted that there were a lot of drivers dying of chest injuries. Then they engaged engineers who developed seat belt. What we know is that seat belt saves 45% of people who might have died. So 45% is a significant number to us. So it's very important for Botswana to seat belt.
Many parents traveling with their young children in the vehicle often allow their children to sit unsecured inside the vehicle. Sometimes children too small to use seat belts are allowed to sit in the front passenger seat next to their parents as they drive. Allowing children to sit unsecured in moving vehicle is an extremely risky practice, as children, due to their size, are more likely to be thrown forward with greater force, which can result in serious injuries even at relatively low speeds.
The patterns of injuries during the post-mortem, we've noted that drivers typically, those who don't put on seat belt, they will have the following injuries. One, they will have chest injuries due to the steering wheel. Two, they will also have what we call dicing injuries, especially on the right side, which are due to the fragmentation of the glass of the car. Then we also noted that they will have what we call typical driver's injuries, where they have fracture on the legs due to braking of the car.
You must just note a lot of young people who are growing. Some of them have scars on the forehead because of them hitting either the seats or hitting the windscreen while vehicles are being stopped by applying sudden brakes.
Children as young as the age of 13 are not recommended to sit in the front passenger seat because of the risk of being thrown forward, as well as airbags that can injure them when they deploy.
But we have seen situations where parents travel with their kids and they will be belted themselves, but the kids will not be belted. So when an accident takes place, the first person to fly through the seats to the windscreen will be this kid that is not belted.
And this is not only, for adults. You see adults driving kids inside the cars without kids putting on seatbelts. They'll be putting on seatbelts, but the kids are at the back without seatbelts. Kids will be at the back without a baby seat. And kids will be sitting in between the seats. And those behaviors, you don't read a lot into such behaviors, but those behaviors are very deadly for our children as well as ourselves.
The use of seatbelt is mandated by law under the Road Traffic Act of Botswana for all occupants and all types of moving vehicles that are equipped with seatbelts at all times. Failure of any person to wear seatbelts in a moving vehicle will attract a monetary fine. Parents must set a good example to their children by always buckling themselves first when they get into a vehicle, before encouraging their children to always use their seatbelts.
The law is very clear. You got to put a seatbelt as a driver, you got to put on a seatbelt as a passenger. Even rear seats passengers have to be putting on seatbelts.
When stepping inside a vehicle, one of the first things to do is to wear your seatbelt. It is essential to wear seatbelts appropriately to reduce the risk of injuries from improper use of seatbelt.
By law, as soon as you put your vehicle on a gear and take off, before you do that, you should have made sure that you have belted.
Pull the seatbelt from its resting position and press it into the buckle until you hear a snap. Ensure that the lower waist belt crosses above the thigh and not on top of the stomach, which can cause internal injuries in the event of sudden braking or a car crash. The upper belt should cross comfortably between the neck and the arms and should not be too tight, rubbing against the neck, which can cause neck injuries. There are some common practices that some occupants do to avoid wearing seatbelts, and these practices place them at an increased danger of seatbelt injuries. Some passengers will wear the seatbelt and then pass the top part of the belt behind their back, leaving only the lower belt on. This can result in a condition where the torso bends too far forward during a crash, which can result in spinal injuries. Another dangerous practice is to keep the seatbelt latched in, usually done to silence the warning sound from the vehicle. This is the same as not wearing a seatbelt and can lead to being thrown forward during a collision or a car crash.
And that is why we are saying, the reason why we are having a lot of people, some of them who are confined to wheelchairs, is because some of them were not at the time of the accident putting on seatbelts. Why we have lost some of our friends and relatives is because some of them were thrown outside the vehicles during the rollover or during the crashes because they were not putting on seatbelt. So if you really take care of yourself, if you believe you matter in life, every time you travel or you are traveling, make sure your seatbelt is on.
Seatbelts save many lives by securing vehicle occupants during a road crash, and not wearing your seatbelt properly places your life in danger of serious injuries or even death.
And we have seen even in places like Gaborone, where you see a lot of parents driving with kids who are, literally standing between the seats, and parents are not even bothered. But you apply sharp brakes, as the vehicle stops, the momentum moves forward.
Young children must be transported in vehicles using child seats that are appropriate for the age and size of the child.
What is important is for the under fives to be strapped in their chair and also at the back, because with each and every braking movement, it's likely to be thrown out of the car. So if Botswana can hit what we are saying, it is very important.
For kids under the age of 5, they must be belted on car seats so that they are protected.
Baby seats should be securely placed in the back seat of the car and should never be placed in the front passenger seat, where it is in danger of being blown by inflating airbags. As the child grows, booster seats are necessary to increase the sitting position of the child to ensure that the seat belt will fit them without rubbing against their neck or passing over their belly area. Only children of ages 13 and above should be allowed to sit on the car seat without the use of a booster seat, as long as they can sit with their backs against the backrest and their feet touching the floor.
To the also police out there, they're using the scientific postmortems as we are presenting today. Let's use it to say, Botswana, this is what is happening in our country. It's not outside, it is in our country. How can we use the knowledge of our forensic pathology unit to help us? These are our local people. We empathize with Botswana like everyone.
These are really the risks that we would want people to get to know, that failure to use a seatbelt is risky, but itself is not a cause of a road traffic crash.
Seatbelt can save your life. And seatbelts have proven that they can do that. But a lot of people are taking seatbelts for granted. But seatbelt is what saves lives.
Many motorists whose lives have been impacted by injuries and long recovery periods following a road crash face an uphill battle of recovering from their injuries well enough that they can be fit to return to active duty.
So first of all, a motor vehicle accident can have a very big impact on the individual in terms of boredom and setting on of mental health conditions like anxiety and depression.
Road accidents have a big impact on an individual's mental condition during the recovery period, and when the patient also has to face financial losses from the inability to work and earn a living, the results can affect them heavily.
I think there's a very big need for rehabilitation. I'm trying to get people back to work. So early intervention has been shown to have a good outcome and can have a major impact on the outcome of rehabilitation.
It takes collective effort from various role players to assist the victim of a road crash to recover from their injuries and regain their ability to return to work, or some form of recovery that allows them to regain their independence and provide for themselves.
So injury prevention is really key to try and prevent the accidents from happening. But once someone has had an accident, whether it's a musculoskeletal condition or a more severe accident like a spinal cord injury or a head injury, it is really important to get all the role players involved and have a team approach to try and see how the person can get back to work. It's important to engage the employer from an early stage.
These various role players range from medical workers who attend to the injuries, the caregivers who look after the patients at home, and the employers who must accommodate the employee under a modified set of conditions to accommodate them back in their employment.
Because the employer plays an important part in making work accommodations to ensure that the person can go back to sustainable employment. Often work accommodations can be of a low cost and low technology, so it's good to explore strategies that can help the person go back to work.
MVA Fund assists employers to accommodate patients by making necessary modifications to their places of work to ensure that the recovering patients, where possible, can return to the work they were doing.
Perhaps in a phased return to work, so looking at reduced work tasks or reduced work hours, to have a phased return to work and see how the person can be employed, perhaps in their own occupation or in a different occupation. So it's really important to engage all the role players from early on and have a team approach to get the person back to work sustainably.
In cases where the victims are unable to return to duty, MVA Fund works with the employer to try and find alternative work that the patient can be able to do based on the nature of their injuries. Patients may be redeployed within the company of their work, or in other instances where a suitable job does not exist within the company, MVA Fund assists the patients to find employment in another company.
And these accidents can also have a major impact on the economy of the country in terms of lost productivity and also the cost of rehabilitation.
In our program, if you cannot get them to go back to what they were doing, we usually try to negotiate with the employers so that they are redeployed within their workplace. In cases where they can't even get redeployed, we assist them to look for employment outside, which sometimes, usually because of the challenge that we know of non-employment in the country, we may not even get anything outside, but we support them all the way to make sure they can economically support themselves.
Patients who are unable to return to work due to the severity of their injuries are provided with monetary assistance by MVA Fund to mitigate their loss of income. This assistance is provided on an annual basis to the victim's nominated caregiver and is intended to assist in cases where the victim is unable to provide for themselves and their dependents.
For somebody who gets severely injured and they cannot go back to work, it means there is a loss of employment. These people will be getting allowances because what the fund gives you most of the time does not match what you get because of the prescription limit. You can only get to a maximum of 6,000. It means all the support has been cut to 6,000 to support the family. And sometimes for these people as well, they need what we call caretakers to take care of them, to make sure that because of their injuries, they're still able to bath, groom themselves, eat, and all that. And all these things are expenses that are paid for by the fund.
In the event of death of a victim of a road crash, There are other financial benefits that are provided to the victim's family, as well as financial support for those dependents who have lost their provider that was taking care of them.
They get funeral assistance from fund. And then after that, we have what we call loss of support, where we have to make sure that all the dependents that they are leaving behind, they get support from the fund. This is also prescribed by the Act to how much assistance they can get from the fund.
Road traffic accidents were dealing with sudden, unexpected death. And most of the people that are likely to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, they are likely to suffer from depression, and also the grieving period is increased because it's sudden, unexpected. Remember, they will say, I was just calling him on the phone. He can't be dead now. So it's shock. So it's really affecting both us as the pathologists who are doing the postmortem, the children, the country, the community. Can we please, Botswana, take care of ourselves?
Despite the assistance that MVA Fund provides, in most cases the financial assistance is not enough to return the victim and their dependents to the life they were used to. Through the road safety awareness and injury prevention initiatives, MVA Fund aims to encourage the public to be aware of the consequences of falling victim to a road crash, with the hope of causing them to act in ways that will keep them safe.
In instances where people are dying, they are leaving small children that have to be supported. These children don't only lose on the financial support, they lose on the parents who could be guiding them. So the whole impact of it is social, it's financial on everyone. So my role as a case manager is as much as we support these people continuously, we need to show them that side of road accident.
In this episode, we have seen how seatbelts are very important in saving us from being thrown forward in the event of sudden braking or a road crash to prevent us from suffering serious injuries or death. We have also seen how it is important for parents to ensure that their children are properly secured with the appropriate child restraints and ensure that young children are only allowed to ride in the back seat of the car. In the next episode, we are going to look at the safety of pedestrians who share the use of the road with vehicles. Join us on the next episode.